yeah. Today. I'm gonna be joyful. Ooh, I'm gonna be joyful.
Welcome to Ball with Bill on the Wit. This episode was about the Mets. It was summarizing this past season, what went right, what went wrong, reflecting a little bit on 2024, just a touch, and just thinking about the Mets as a whole from top down. We looked at the roster going into the season. We talked about the starting pitching and how that was a question mark, and down the stretch, that led to the downfall. We talked about how the hitting was a roller coaster and how elite they were with runs scoring position at the end of the season, but sometimes it just didn't feel like they were getting the big hits. We went to a plethora of topics, and Ryan and I, this was a bit of a venting session. It was, obviously a few weeks past the last game of the season versus that dreadful game against the Marlins, but it was a session that just lifted any sort of pain and suffering off our shoulders. That's kind of what it was. I know it's a little late and the World Series are just about to get underway, but I felt that it was necessary to post even though it's way past the season. Still in the postseason though, but it was still a great conversation, and Ryan and I got into some conversations that we've talked about throughout the season, even off the pod, that we just put it all together onto this episode, which put a bow on the Mets 2025 year, and we look ahead to next year. So that's what this episode's about. A couple logistics I want to get out of the way. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I will be posting a podcast episode, whether it's Ball with Bill or Business with Bill. On Mondays, I'll be doing an EFL recap from the games that happened on Sunday. This is our fantasy football league that I'm a part of with 11 other of my close friends from home. And on Wednesdays, I will be posting a more in-depth look at the league, the best and worst teams, the best and worst matchups from the prior week, what the teams look like going forward, things like that. So I've looked to stay consistent with that, kind of just talk about the EFL a little bit more. I think it's just something super fun, and there's a lot to talk about too. So I'm excited to give you that schedule. Monday will be a Sunday recap. Tuesday will be a pod episode. Wednesday will be another EFL video. Thursday will be another pod, and we'll go from there. But that's what I want to establish with you guys right now. You guys deserve a schedule, and I want to stick to it and give you guys as much content as I can. So without further ado, enjoy today's episode with Ryan Barry as we talk about the 2025 New York Mets. Enjoy. All right, join me now, fellow New York sports fan. This is my guy who I go to every single time we watch the Met game, watch the Giants game, even a little bit of Knicks postseason too. We can go back and forth about this all day, about our teams. My good buddy, Ryan Barry. How we doing, my friend?
How are we doing, Bill? Good to be here. Happy to be here.
We're doing great. I mean, all things considered, I'm doing great, I would say. Obviously, we're here to talk about something that isn't a great topic with the Mets. It feels wrong introducing it that way, but it was, all things considered, I'll say first, it was a fun year to follow. That's how I feel, at least. And while the outcome was extremely disappointing, it was still fun to at least follow the team, be involved in just about every single game, and feel like you had something to watch.
Yeah, I think the fact that we were in it up until the very end is both the most heartbreaking part and the part that actually made the season entertaining. As much as it didn't go our way, it could have just as easily, we could have won that last game, make it into the playoffs, and then next thing you know, you say this is the most suspenseful Mets season that I've ever watched leading up to a playoffs, only because they did everything in their power to try and ruin it, and then inevitably successfully ruined it.
Yeah, I think we've had. I mean, This is the whole thing about being a Mets fan. It's embracing this, and this is the whole thing about being a New York sports fan. We find ourselves in situations to have this high amount of hope that we build up, that
Hmm.
the media builds up, that everything else builds up, and most of the time, as of late, it comes crumbling down.
And that's like textbook when I talk to people about like what, you know, New York sports is and what being a New York fan is. Disappointment, getting your hopes up, ripping it away from you, and then the next season going right back into it saying, you know what, it's this year. This is their year. You know, we're gonna do it. Jackson Dart's the truth. Juan Soto is gonna come in and save New York Mets baseball, and it just doesn't happen. But Jackson Dart is the truth, and he is going to save New York Giants football.
Okay, I'll I'll retweet. I'll retweet that one. Maybe we'll get into that in a second, but I want to go back to the Mets, and I want to use this time to recap recap the season, starting from the off season following the 2024 season, a magical run going all the way to the NLCS, losing in 6 to the Dodgers. Immediately after that game, I remember we went back and forth. We had a phone call. It was very emotional,
Mm.
but there in that moment there was a lot of hope. Like that was the best that I felt with the Mets team, in hopes that there's more to come, whether it was keeping the same guys or getting better, getting more free agents, the guys gluing together. There was a lot more hope just because of the success we had.
Yeah, I mean, it really felt like at the end there, like after that season ended, and with Howie Rose's speech and Gary Cohen signing off, like you didn't feel like it was a failure. You felt satisfied even though you lost. You felt like this was a successful season, and for the first time, you felt like, okay, this is a team that this wasn't just 2015 Daniel Murphy goes, absolutely haywire in the playoffs and gets us to the World Series. This is a real team at every level. They have something that can be built for longevity and I don't want to say a dynasty, but a long-term contender. And that's how I think most Mets fans felt after last season ended. Coming into this year, especially when you add a guy like Juan Soto, you go out and you make so many other moves in the offseason for pitching and whatever else. You see how the farm looks, and you see that you've got a lot of young prospects that could be ready to come up this year. And you're like, okay, a team that just went to the NLCS, went shot for shot with the Dodgers up till game 5. I mean, when we did win, we were putting up runs. It wasn't like it was these close etched out games where we got lucky or just they didn't score. We were putting on runs. And now we come into this season with all those additions, that same team just with more depth, and you miss the playoffs. I I mean, even if you don't get all that extra depth and you want to take the prospects out of it, just that same team adding Juan Soto, I mean, that should have been a lock for the division at the way that the Phillies started the season. I mean, we never should have let them come back. I mean, I think we had a 12-game lead on the division at one point or something like
Yeah,
that.
it was early on, but we did. That's correct. It was a season that just quickly slipped away after July.
Hmm.
What you mentioned about the pitching, and especially with that last series, I remember I think there was a stat where it was I think we scored, or like there was 34 total runs that were scored, and we had like 39 walks. Like I think the Dodgers scored. It was something along those lines. And so the pitching was a problem. So this was, whether it was foreshadowing with this season or not, during that series, the pitching was a problem. We didn't have an elite starter. We were coming off a year with Sean Manaea, who was really good, who deserved an extension, and we were really happy that he got it. Like Senga, I remember he came back in the postseason. He wasn't really himself. He didn't really pitch that great. Severino had a really solid year, and we had some, other like Quintana had a pretty good, a couple good appearances. Peterson in the pen coming back. These guys stepped up in the postseason, but you felt like the Mets were still missing something else, maybe another depth piece or just really an ace. I think
Yeah.
I remember we talked about that. That it was a pretty good free agent market, and that's kind of what I want to look up too, was to refamiliarize myself with the free agents that were there. And the big names were Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, Max Fried. I would say those were the three. You throw in Nathan Eovaldi, Flaherty was another one. I would say those were the five names that that Mets fans, we wanted to see them try and go after, and they didn't. Right? They didn't. Burns signed the 6-year deal with Arizona. Snell 5 years with the Dodgers. Fried 8 years with the Yankees. Evaldi a 3-year with Texas. And what the Mets did, they re-signed Manaea for 3. They brought in Griffin Canning for a 1-year deal, and brought in Frankie Montas for 2. Those were the big free agent signings, I guess, and re-signings. So we didn't really make much of a splash as you would have hoped, but this is kind of something that we've learned with David Stearns, with his philosophy is not to go after the big time starters.
Mhm.
So when the Mets didn't get those starters that I just mentioned, or really any of those names, what did you feel about the season and about the rotation?
Um, before the season, I definitely wasn't excited. I was definitely a little nervous going into it. You don't really know what a guy like Griffin Canning is going to be able to do. Frankie Montas was hurt at the beginning of the year, I believe. So that
Yes,
wasn't
he
really
was.
on the radar as any help. Manaea, I think he was hurt at the time as well.
Well,
Um,
he was fine, and then in spring training he gets banged up and he misses.
yes.
He ends up missing most of the first half of the year.
And then that's what led to us having to start the season with Clay Holmes,
Yes.
which was another thing that going into it, you were like, I don't know how this is gonna go. This is a guy who's blown up with the Yankees, who, you know, us being Mets fans, as New Yorkers, like we know plenty of Yankees fans. You know a lot more about Yankees lore and what's going on in their organization than any other team in baseball besides the Mets. So you hear and see all this stuff about Clay Holmes. Then he comes here to transition as a starter. You're nervous going into it. But, I mean, at the beginning of the year, that starting rotation really, they really proved us, or at least proved me. I don't know, some Mets fans are probably excited about him, but proved me wrong. I mean, we started off this season hot. Griffin Canning, before the injury, God, I loved watching him pitch. His changeup, he was looking really good. Kodai Senga started off the season very hot. Clay Holmes was actually, you know, wasn't anything electric, but he did a job. He got you to the 5th inning. He wasn't giving up massive runs or having any huge blow up innings. And Mendoza was doing a good job of almost getting him out of the game before he could get to that point, because you started to see him have those struggles, and Mendoza didn't give him much leeway. He was kind of pulling him early to make sure that didn't happen. And then later in the season, obviously, that kind of fell apart. But going into the year, I think it was kind of an up and down. You felt real bad about it, then you felt really good about it. Then it kind of started to set in that the rotation we had. Not to say you have to have big names, but the guys we had, statistically speaking, weren't going to keep up that level of production for the entire season, which is where you thought getting a guy like Manaea back, calling up some of these young guys later in the year, getting a guy like Montas back, all that was supposed to fill in for any regression by Clay Holmes, regression by Griffin Canning, whatever else. But I mean, between injuries and that inevitable regression, you couldn't keep up until guys like Nolan McLean came up. And Nolan McLean, God, he's can. I hope he's a Met for the rest of his career if he can keep pitching like he did this year.
Yeah, I mean that's another topic I want to get into is the three starting pitchers that got brought up late in the year. But going into the season, yeah, it was always going to be the what if, and that was the biggest question mark, was the starting pitching. Of course, everyone knew it. Everyone and their mother knew it. When you look at the pitchers that got signed for those big contracts, like you look at Max Fried was the biggest winner for this season, at least. He was really good. He kind of fell off a cliff and not fell off a cliff. I'm sorry, that's harsh. He slowed down a little bit in the second half, but he was really good in the beginning, and he's still a really good pitcher. He was their ace as when
I
Garrett
mean,
Cole went down too.
if not for Scooble, he's probably Cy Young.
Yeah,
There's not really many other people that are getting it over
in
Max
the
Fried.
AL. Trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, him or Crochet would be another name to come to mind in the AL, but
Yeah.
that's it. But it's Scoobles to lose. But yes, Freed was the other name. Blake Snell. Blake Snell, as of late, the last part of the season was great. And yes, the Mets, in hindsight, would have been, it would have been great to have him. But he missed 2 months, 2 or 3 months of the season. I checked, 2 starts and then was out. So he took some time. So no matter what we would have had, we would have missed a lot of time. And I guess you could say, just thinking about it, Manaea also missed time. So imagine if it was, if it was waiting on Snell instead of Manaea, it would have been tough to. But we wanted to bring back Manaea so bad because of what he did, what he kind of meant to the team. There was a lot more than just the stats that helped him out. But in my opinion, the other guys didn't perform like that well this season or this past season to where it made me think that they could have been that much of a difference maker. And I look at Nathan Eovaldi, he pitched 130 innings, which isn't a lot. He started 22 games, was amazing, but he didn't pitch a lot. So I mean, it definitely would have helped. But otherwise they weren't electric. So
And I think that kind of goes back to, you know, when I said before, where the Mets could, yes, last year they looked like they were set up for longevity in a dynasty, right? That all that was all conditional based on at the end of the season and in the off season, us making sure we went out and filled the holes we needed to. And that was what was really going to give us that depth and keep us as a long-term contender, because if we do look at it, last year, the New York Mets, especially in the postseason, end of the year, I mean, how many games did we watch, Bill, that at the fifth inning, you're like, the Mets shouldn't win this game. And then they just found a way every time. I mean, by the time we got into that Dodgers series, that game 5, I really didn't even think we were going to lose. I had 100% faith that we were winning that series no matter how bad it looked. I was convinced that this team couldn't lose. And that was part of what made them so electric. But that doesn't make for a, stable, winning, consistent baseball team. You can't rely on a comeback win or a walk-off home run or a Pete Alonso 3-run shot to send you to the playoffs every single game. It needs to be consistency, putting up runs, safe pitching, not, a starter not giving up any more than 2 runs in 6 innings. Like, that's the level of stable moderation you need on a team to actually be a contender. And we didn't do enough in the offseason to actually fix the pitching problem there. And that's why I think this year you kind of saw the results of what should have happened last year. We were almost hanging on by a thread last year, and this year that thread kind of snapped, and we fell off a cliff post All-Star break.
yeah,
Unfortunate.
yeah, and I guess that's what happens with pitchers like that, with that type of pitching when it's not elite of the elite. Case in point, David Peterson,
Yep.
who metrics wise didn't have this elite stuff. He's got a funky arm angle that makes it difficult, but he was really good that first half. He was the Mets' best pitcher, the most consistent pitcher, who's the only one who actually got deep into games. Even when the Mets were good, no one got deep. He was the only one. But in that second half of the season, David Peterson's ERA in the last 2 months were never below 6. He was awful. And I don't know if that's due to pitchers or rather hitters picking up on him. His stuff isn't playing as much because he never had elite stuff. It was always good arm, good location. His arm delivery was kind of funky. It was other factors that had nothing to do with how the pitch was breaking. So as hitters get better and they see more pitchers, obviously I think they just adjust. And he got knocked around badly. And that just kind of puts a cherry on top of another guy who I think we all believed in Peterson and he was excellent, but he fizzled out at the end.
I think that was kind of one of the signs for me that it was over was, listen, I'm diehard New York Mets fan, love them to death, but beginning of the season, I watch pretty much every game. Middle of the season, I kind of tail off, and then end of the year, I lock back in.
It's
Now,
the normal roller coaster for watching
yeah,
an MLB season.
exactly. And I obviously still keep up with the Mets when I'm not watching their games. I'm checking in every day, see what happened, check the box score, this, that, whatever. If I don't have time to watch, I'll watch a game here and there. But when I came back at the end of the year and you saw a guy, and I was watching every game now, and I'm watching consistently David Peterson starts. And you start seeing a guy who really, for the middle part of the season, for, really the first month that we started to fall apart, this was really the only guy who was kind of our rock. You know what I mean? After Griffin Canning went down, when Frankie Matos came back and wasn't doing anything, Sean Manaea, was still hurt, or at that time maybe he came back and was still terrible, whatever. David Peterson was the only guy. Mendoza said it at one point. That was the rock for this team. He had been kind of holding things together. So when you see that guy fall apart, and that guy start to get hit and shelled, it's kind of that's that last nail in the coffin where you're like, all right, they got that last thing that was holding us together. And then you tried to get it back by doing things with bringing up the young guys, and it just didn't really reignite anything for any long term. They tried. They really tried at the end of the year there. I mean, how many times did we have, a big game and then a game the next day where you win, and then, you and I would call and we'd talk about it, and hey, this is it. You know what I mean? This is what they needed. A young guy like McLean comes in, lights up the team, and we get on the bats, and now we win 2 games. This is how we get hot momentum. And then you lose a series to the White Sox or the Marlins or some bum team that you're like, sorry, not bum team, but you lose a series to a team that you need to beat. I mean,
Yes.
what's the stat for the Mets against teams under 500? I mean, we were talking about that at one point beginning of the year, that when we were still the best team in baseball, I think the majority of our losses, or a significant amount of our losses, were against teams under 500. Had we won those, I mean, we're in the playoffs right now. You win half of those, and you maybe even win the division.
Yeah, the it was so stressful. It was so frustrating. And the series I know what you're alluding to is the one in particular was the sweep against Philly at home. I was at one of those games. Everything that could have went right in that series went right. I remember we walked them off. It was so good, and then it was that next series where we lost it against Miami,
Yep.
where we just went on such a high, just to come crashing down to right back to reality, I guess. Which I hate to say that's even reality because that shouldn't have been the reality, but it was during that time. It as much as because since we're just on the topic of just the season, we're bouncing all over the place, but with how the Mets performed with runners in scoring position at the second half of the season, how much it improved and how great it was, you still felt like, at least for me, that they were always missing the clutch hit. And I checked it just before. In the eighth inning, in the eighth inning or later, when the Mets were down, they were 0-70.
0-70?
0-70. Didn't win a single game, 70 losses. Can't spell it out anymore.
That's tough to hear. That's honestly, Billy, like, I've been just kind of coping, just trying to.
That was a rough stat. I didn't want to bring that one up. That's a rough stat.
That hits me where it hurts, man. That really does. Yeah. Wow. You're right. I mean, that's really all it is. I mean, it's the difference between this year and last year. If people want to talk about that, is the clutchness. I mean, Lindor, I love him to death, but he really this year that you didn't see that kind of punch that he used, that he didn't have that confidence at the plate, or at least I didn't have that confidence in him at the plate towards the end of the season that he was going to get that hit. And there were, multiple times that he did. I forget what game it was. Series probably a couple weeks ago actually, that we had strung it together. Lindor hit a single or something, and he brought in a run to tie the game, and I think we ended up losing that game anyway. But it's just in the majority of moments, nobody was stepping up. Nobody was ready for the moment. Soto had a quiet, great year, but he wasn't really doing it in any of those big moments that you needed. Nobody was really stepping up, and you kind of needed that guy, and nobody really.
And I hate to say that Soto didn't step up, because he had games and he improved so much more in that second half in the last month with his average and runs in scoring position. He was getting hits. I remember SNY could put up the stats. He was hitting like over 300, and it was a lot better. He was getting a lot more clutch. But there were just certain at bats that I guess when you look at them under a microscope, because every game in September is under a microscope, it's an extension of the playoffs.
Yep.
You just didn't feel like Soto or Lindor. Pete was the only guy and actually Brandon Nimmo were the only two guys who came through, and you really felt like gave us the best shot when they were up at the plate to bring home a couple runs when it mattered most. But I think the biggest thing is that 8th inning and 9th inning stat. Because I think we think of that how clutch the Mets were. If we were able to get at least like 10 like 10 wins with losing with the down in past the 8th inning, I think we think of the Mets and how clutch they were a lot differently.
I mean, honestly, forget 10 wins. All we needed was one. You
Ultimately
literally
needed one.
of
Ultimately needed
70
one.
of those wins.
Yeah.
70 of those wins. One guy hits a solo shot, 2-run shot. I mean, all right. 70 wins, or 70 losses rather, say on a generous note. I mean, it's probably more, but let's say generously that 20 of those 70 losses were a 1-run loss. It was probably more like 50, but let's say 20. 1 out of 20 of those losses, all you need is a walk and then a 2-run shot. That's it. Or a single and a 2-run shot. Or string something together with 3 hits, get runners on first and second, get a double in the gap, score somebody from first, and win the game like that. I mean, there's so many scenarios where all it takes is a 1-2-3. And the Mets are supposed to be, I mean, going into this year, you and I know we talked about it. You're telling me Lindor, Alonso, Nimmo, Soto, these guys, you're telling me in any order, I don't care how Mendoza wants to mix them up. Any of those 4 guys, you're telling me you can't string something together? I mean, there's plenty of times, sure, you can hit a solo shot here, nice single here, but if you're not going to follow it up, that's not baseball. You go do that in the batting cage. That's great. I'm glad you can do that. But we are here to string things together as a team, and the Mets did not do that.
I'll get a little on the positive side. Most of the time, those stats where it's like that when a team is really bad in 1-run games, the Mets last year were really good in 1-run games last year. And that's why we always felt we were clutch and we had this magic, right? Those stats tend to flip. They tend to be a little bit more volatile. So I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe that's a little fluky, and that shouldn't happen again. But I according to a Reddit user, that this is the 3rd time something like this has happened in Mets history, which is not surprising to me given the Mets and collapses. But I think the silver lining is that could change year to year. I don't expect that to be something that stays consistent. I want to talk about the acquisitions that the hitters that we brought in, from free agency to trade deadline. So really, it's not a lot. It's not a long list. It's really Jose Siri. I guess you bring back Winker, of course Juan Soto, Cedric Mullins, and I mean, those are the four guys that I'm thinking off the top of my head that can't think of anyone else that were. I think those are the four new names.
Those are the only four
Those,
significant.
yeah, the only four ones. How do you think those guys panned out? I mean, we talked about Juan Soto a lot. I guess the Winker was a lost cause. He didn't play. He was
Yeah, I
he,
mean, listen. I still love Jesse Winker.
yeah. He's
Don't
on.
get me wrong.
We have no idea if he'll come back. I don't know. He was on a 1 year.
Yeah, he was kind of obviously just an asterisk there. So we'll go based off of last year with him and say I love him and push him to the side. But the rest of them, Cedric Mullins, I liked. He had some good defensive plays. His hitting really wasn't anything special.
It was
Kind of
terrible, honestly.
inconsistent, not a good hitter. I mean, he wasn't really doing anything significant there. But defensively did fine. But at the time, I mean, I feel like you really didn't need it. I think it was kind of an addition that was almost just trying to shake something up, just trying to figure something out and try and fill a hole, that you think you have. But Tyrone Taylor was doing just fine playing defense in center field. Neither of them are great hitters. For a while, it made me regret losing Drew Gilbert because as much as Drew Gilbert didn't really play great towards the end of the season anyway, he has been kind of electric for the Giants since we moved him. So that was something that after Cedric Mullins I was disappointed about. But Juan Soto made up for all that because Juan Soto had a phenomenal year. I mean, absolutely great. That acquisition panned out exactly how you thought it should. Didn't get us anywhere, and that's not his fault. I mean, he did what he could. Basically, almost a 40-40 season. I mean, just on that alone, I think the investment pays off. On top of that, what did he have an over 900 OPS? Did his OPS get to?
I think it did.
I think it was like
I could fact check
927
that.
or 924 or something like that. The batting average obviously didn't get up there, but nowadays stats less important. And honestly, if you're still putting up MVP type numbers in every other category, I can't complain. I mean, first person put up a season like this since Barry Bonds.
Yeah, his OPS was 921. He almost one dotted.
Yeah.
He had a 6.2 WAR. He was. I mean, when you think that we're gonna get another 14 more years of this, you're excited.
Yeah.
I've like this is probably a ceiling season. I don't expect him to steal 40 bags, which was a great story. I think that should be dove into a little bit more about how the Mets were able to steal that many bases at such a uh at such a high clip with and how good they were.
Yeah.
I don't think they got thrown. I don't think they got thrown out since May by a catcher. The
No,
only time they were out was by pickoffs.
and even specifically Soto, like for you to take a guy who for years, has been this electric guy and this superstar, and no one has really tapped into his base running skill the way the Mets did this year. I mean, before this year, I think the most steals he's had in a season is like 12.
Right on.
And at one point in the year beginning when he still only hit 20, I remember being like, wow, this already is a crazy year for Juan Soto on the bases. Who knew he was going to almost get to 40
He almost
at
swept
that
20 more bags. Yeah.
And that a testament to Carlos Mendoza, recognizing that and really exploiting that talent that Soto has. It's a big factor, especially for a guy who can walk as the clip that he does. Like, I mean, if you're getting a walk and then stealing a bag, I mean, you're basically getting a free runner in scoring position every time the guy gets on base or gets up to the plate rather. So that's huge. Now, whether or not you're going to score him afterward relies on Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo and whoever else. But I don't, the people out there who can still say like, oh, Juan Soto, what a waste of money. How do you feel about spending $800 billion to not make the playoffs?
That should be dead.
And like, you don't know what you're talking about. Tell me you don't know ball without telling me you don't know ball. Because yes, did the Mets not make the playoffs? Absolutely. Yes. Can you absolutely verbally berate me for it for the next 10 minutes because I talked so much shit at the beginning of the year that we're about to win the World Series? Absolutely, go right ahead. Can you say that Juan Soto was the reason we didn't make the playoffs? Absolutely not. Juan Soto did everything he could to get us there and did his part.
Yeah, that was the story of the season where it was a bunch of individual performances.
Yep.
Nimmo, I think, tied his career high in homers. Pete had another 35 homer plus season. He had the second most RBIs in his career. Had the best average of his career. Soto, of course. Lindor still, no matter what, got to the 30-30 club.
Yep.
Everyone, like the big four, and even Alvarez, you could say like Francisco Alvarez at the end of the season, before the guy was playing with 8 fingers because of his hand injuries, was really good.
Yeah.
Beatty turned it around in the second half of the year. He hit almost 300 at the end of the season. Jeff McNeil was very hit here or there. Starling Marte really fizzled it out at the end.
I mean, I like Jeff for a good part of the year, but I will say, I mean, it's when you honestly when you spell it out like that and you say it out loud like that, you almost think like what went wrong, you know. And granted, obviously, you know the pitching went wrong, but there were times when the hitting is the problem too. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Like you can't just say, oh, the pitching was terrible, the pitching was terrible, because at a certain point there were multiple games where you again have a chance to come back and you're not getting runners in from scoring position, you're not hitting there. So again, as much as I love to play devil's advocate here with the Mets and be a pessimist because god, they've left a bad taste in my mouth after the season, the New York Mets are going to be just fine. I really do think that the New York Mets are going to be just fine. I think we're going to get it together. I think with the talent you have, now coming up, with a guy like Noah McLean, Jonah Tong, Brandon Spro, a couple of these other guys that we have down in the farm system, guys like Ronnie Mauricio, Mark Vientos developing more and really finding their role. I think that eventually we're going to get to the point where you've built a stable team around Juan Soto, but this year it was too inconsistent.
Can we talk about then let's talk a little bit about Mauricio Beatty and
This is
like
my
the
top.
young guys like McLean, Tong, the future.
Yeah.
I think and Vientos. Those 3 guys. What's your temperature on Ronnie Mauricio and Beatty? And even Acuna. Now I'm just thinking about it. Acuna. How are you feeling about those 3 guys?
So the baby Mets.
Yes. I
Ooh,
when
I guess
yeah,
I'd consider Acuna, Vientos,
Beatty.
Beatty, and Mauricio. Those 4.
Yep.
Um,
They were the OGs. I feel like now I think that torch has been passed to
yeah,
McLean.
the torch has been passed.
But
It's
they
now
were
it's
they were the OG
McLean.
baby Mets.
OG baby Mets. When really things were starting to look good, and you're like, all right, these are the guys that might be the center of it looking good. I think you got to keep Acuna. I think Acuna is a great versatility guy. Great defender, fantastic on the base paths, and if you can figure out the bat, turn him a little more into a good gap to gap contact hitter, and get him more consistently hitting the ball, get his average up, then I think he can find a spot. But for now, I think coming off the bench, Acuna's a great guy to have. Beatty, I love. I really think that Brett Beatty, I think when he first started off with the Mets, I think he had a hot trajectory, and I think he plateaued for a second, and I think a lot of people started to lose faith in him there. You remember, I mean, there was so much hype around him.
Yeah, I think he was a first round pick for us.
Yeah.
I think he was like 7. I saw he was or like he was like 7th in our. He was really high, really good prospect.
And there was a lot of hype for him when he came to the MLB and started off hot, and then people started to kind of look at it and be like, all right, well, he's really not doing all that well anymore. He's kind of plateaued. And I think he's turned it around. I think he's back on the uptick. I think he figured it out. I think he's gotten the experience to kind of get through some of his slumps and figure out his routine, get his hits, find his moments, use his opportunities when he's playing and starting, and use his opportunities when he's coming off the bench. I mean, he did a great job in certain situations pinch hitting, but my favorite of all of them is probably Mark Vientos. I think Mark Vientos.
That's a hot take.
I think really, I love Beatty, I do, but I think the way Mark Vientos bounced back from he should be traded. He's the one guy that he's hit his ceiling. He's not gonna be that swaggy V that he had last year. Like, some people saying that was a Daniel Murphy run and send him on his way. And I think that's a perfect example of you say that the whole Daniel Murphy thing, and then what did Daniel Murphy do? Daniel Murphy went on to have a great career, and you almost keep that level of production after his playoff run with us. But Mark Vientos did almost the same thing. I mean, he turned it around towards the back half of the year. He really got it together for a while there, started hitting bombs, really looked more confident, looked more like he was enjoying baseball again. For a long time, Mark looked like he was kind of just not enjoying it and really frustrated, really struggling. And I think that in terms of sheer just who has the best chance of reaching their potential, I think it's him. I think Beatty might have the most potential of them all. Mauricio, I really don't even know with him.
He's such a wild card. I want him to be good so bad. By the
He's
way,
such a-
like when he's like the most, oh my gosh, he's the most polarizing player because when he makes contact and when he just ropes a ball to right, like it makes you it fires you up in a different type of way. But
it's so nice, but he just looks.
then when he
so
swings at a ball
lost.
that hits the plate,
Yeah.
it like it kills you. It
Yeah.
like this. Please, I get him off my screen. My dad. We watch him on DVR. We have the games recorded. We just fast forward.
I
We
can't
fast
do
forward.
it.
I can't do it.
He's a physical specimen. The dude's
Yeah.
huge. He can hit the ball hard as shit.
Yep.
But it's when he swings, it's like he's just guessing. It's like he's throwing the bat at the ball, and if it makes contact, great. It can come off real hard. But it's most likely not. And he just looks lost. I don't know. Plus the injury, with how long you've spent waiting for, Ronnie Mauricio to now try and, like, get it together. He almost feels like he still hasn't had his rookie year. You know what I mean? Like, even though this year he did have a lot of time, like, it almost feels like Ronnie Mauricio has not actually had his breakout or his first real performance in the MLB. And at this rate, I don't know if the Mets should wait longer. I don't know if the Mets should deal him. I think that's a possibility. Is you deal Ronnie Mauricio and go get something for him. Whether it be pitching prospects, if you want more of that to try and build guys up that you can bring into the pen. I know you've got a lot of young starters that we like, Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong, Brandon Sproat, but you kind of need the pen too. I mean, the pen's a problem. I mean, we like to talk about the starting rotation, but the pen is a massive problem. Ryan Stanek is a problem. I will stand on this. I know this is maybe just a personal opinion. Ryan Stanek's got to go. I can't.
Well, lucky for you, he's on a 1-year deal, so I don't know if he's coming back
Perfect.
anytime soon.
Just revamp the whole pen. The only guys I want us to keep are Edwin Diaz, probably Hells if he can get it. If he can figure, he started to figure it out at the end there. He wasn't really getting shelled as bad, but if we can get him next season to be back to what he's supposed to be, that could be huge. Did we get Tyler Rogers? How long's his contract for?
I mean, I think as of right, I thought it was just a rental that I'm not 1,000% sure on, but Rogers wouldn't be a bad name to keep. I mean, he's funky. I'm looking at the relievers going into opening day. It was Edwin Diaz. It was Ryan Stanek. It was Reed Garrett, Jose Butto, Danny Young, Kranick, and Huskar Brazavan. And, of course, A.J. Minter. We got to remember, A.J. Minter was one of the big lefty guys that we brought in who was going to be that eighth inning setup man. And he wasn't bad. He had that new hip. He came back from a new hip surgery. He said he was feeling great, and then he misses the entire year. He goes down early. I think it was after, late May, and we lose him. We don't really have a good lefty for the entire year. I think we were rotating guys like Lovelady and Young and like Danny Young and a bunch of guys who were just not solidified until Brooks Raley comes in, who was nails, who was the only guy, minus Edwin Diaz, who actually pitched well That was it. Like
He's the only
Rodgers,
guy that when he came in,
yeah,
you didn't feel terrified that we were about to give up 8 runs in an inning.
exactly. Yeah, even Rodgers had his moments. Like if Tyler Rodgers came into the game and there was a man on first base, I was worried because this whole pitch to contact, weak contact stuff when there was someone on didn't work out well. When there was no one on, it was okay, but when it was just him, oh my gosh. I mean, sorry, when there was people on base, no, he was not reliable. So I think I'm with you though that the bullpen is definitely an area that has to be revamped. I think Minter was on a, I think he was on a 1 year deal. I'm looking at it right now. Like Reed Garrett is, I think he's missing the entire year with Tommy John, so I don't think he's even available next year. Stanek's a free agent. Rogers is going to be a free agent. Soto's a free agent. Gregory Soto, who wasn't like
How do you feel
bad.
about that? You want him? You want him back or not?
Sure, I I I don't need him. I really don't need him. AJ Minter, by the way, it has a player option, which I'm sure he's gonna pick up just because he's gonna need time to come back. So I'm sure he'll be here. But yeah, Soto, I'm fine if he goes. Fine if he goes. He wasn't. I don't know. He was okay for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of indifferent about it. Same way. I don't know. I think the main focus this offseason needs to be all pitching. I think you have the lineup. There's I don't want to get too all over the place, but you can get into a million different moves we make of whether you move Jeff this offseason. He had a pretty decent year this year, and if you think he's not going to be able to replicate or if he's going to regress next year, youth. As much as I love Jeff McNeil, don't get me wrong, but it's inevitable that guys have to move on. You know what I mean? That's just how it goes. And unlike Pete Alonso, who very well, that's another topic we're gonna have to get into depth on. But Pete Alonso, is a guy that you would pay and lock up to retire as a New York Met. I don't know if you're willing to lock up a significant amount of money or more than most people would be willing to lock up Jeff McNeil and help him retire as a Met. You know what I mean? So there's certain guys you move on from there. Is Starling Marte a free agent this year?
I think he's got 1 more year.
He might be another guy maybe that you move. I don't know, but you go get some pieces or move some smaller pieces like that. Maybe go get one more.
Marte's a free agent. Marte is a free agent.
That makes sense.
I'm gonna assume he's gone.
Yeah, I'm gonna assume you let him walk. Bring in somebody new. Who are the top hitters on the market this year?
The outfielders that are potential free agents for 2025 and 2026 is like you got Kyle Tucker. They have Kyle Schwarber in here, but he's gonna be a DH. Cody Bellinger, Luis Robert, Tyler O'Neill, Mullins, of course, but like bringing back Michael Conforto, Mike Yastrzemski, I don't know if he plays center, Trent Grisham, Mitch Haniger, I think he plays a little bit of center, Randall Grichuk, Harrison Bader, Kike Hernandez, Verdugo. That's like another I mean, Kyle Tucker he's not a play center fielder. He's a corner outfielder.
I mean,
Bellinger is an opt out. By the way,
if I doubt Bellinger opts out, but
Yeah.
for example, in a scenario where he does, I would not be against bringing in a guy like Bellinger. Maybe moving him to left field and then putting Brandon Nimmo back in center like he used to do. You maybe lose a little bit of defensive prowess in center with Brandon Nimmo there instead of Tyrone Taylor, but Brandon Nimmo's no slouch in the outfield anyway. That's still a great outfielder you have who can also hit the ball very, very well and consistently. And I don't know. There needs to be more changes than just the pitching this year. There definitely needs to be at least one significant move in the lineup, but I do think the main focus should be pitching for sure. You need to build around Nolan McLean. You need to have Nolan McLean should be the ace going into next year. He should pitch opening day. There should not be another pitcher on that mound opening day, and then hopefully a guy like Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea can figure out how to pitch again because post injury for Mania and post All Star break for Senga, there is absolutely no way you can consider either of them the number one in any rotation in the MLB.
There's a lot of good names in starting pitchers. You have Dylan Cease, Zach Gallen, Framber Valdez, Chris Sale as a club option, Michael King with a mutual option, Shane Bieber as a player option, Shota Imanaga, which I'm assuming they're going to pick up. I mean, a lot of these guys are probably going to pick up. But like Framber Valdez, Zach Gallen wasn't that great this year, but he's done some good stuff with the Diamondbacks. Dylan Cease has always had great stuff, but he's always given the long ball, so he's also a very polarizing player. Ranger Suarez, who was really great with the Phillies, and I think I don't think their cap situation is great, even though there's no cap, but they got to pay people, and so if they want to bring back Schwarber, probably one of those guys isn't coming back. Freddie Peralta as a club option, so there's a lot of good names here.
I like a Michael King, if he doesn't get that mutual option, is a guy that I would like to see the Mets at least, look at, because I think, like you said, the Mets don't have an ace, and as much as I believe 100% Nolan McLean will be that guy, you need another guy that can come in and, barring injury or barring regression on Nolan McLean, sophomore slump, whatever, you need to really have that guy that you can consistently rely on a rock and who has been proven to have success before. And you thought that was going to be a guy like Sean Manaea, to be honest, or a guy like Kodai Senga, honestly. And it was for the first half of the year with Senga. I think at one point he had like a 1.2 ERA. I mean, he was pitching great through his first 10 to 15 starts, but after that it fell apart. It really did.
What do you think about Kodai Senga going into next season? Just general thoughts.
So I'm talking to myself about it in my head as I'm saying all this. I don't know, man. I really don't. I don't know how I feel about Kodai. I loved him when we first got him, and he did great for us last year, or not last year, but the year before. But with the injuries, I mean, last year, started the year injured, came back for one start, got injured again, came back in the playoffs, came back before the playoffs rather, was not good. I mean, you are worried about that happening again, one, plus the fact that he really didn't perform well in the back half of this year, even while relatively healthy. I mean, he had spurts here and there this season, but long term, I don't know. I think he's, what is Kodai, 32 now?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little past his prime for us to be building around him as a piece in the rotation. And how much are we paying him every year?
It's $15 million a year. After 2027, he's a free agent in 2028. He's got an option actually in 2028, a team option. He would have had an option to opt out after 3 seasons if he got to 400 innings. Obviously, that didn't happen due to injury, which isn't entirely his fault, but he talks about how his pitching mechanics are very specific and how I don't know if he's specifically saying this, but we really want to give him that 6 days of rest to have that 6-man rotation. So it becomes a bit of a mental workout to figure out how to position Kodai Senga to be as successful as he can. And he was really good in the first half. Everyone gets this. But if he can't stay healthy, then I think we're dialing it back on how high we can on his ceiling for how good he can be. We know his stuff can play. It's a matter, which was the story for the whole staff, was can they stay healthy and can they make it out of the 5th inning?
Yep.
'Cause that was the tragedy of this season, was they were bottom of the league in starting pitching innings.
Yeah,
We
and with
relied on the
Kodai,
bullpen the entire time, and Sengo certainly wasn't a help.
yeah, I was gonna say with Kodai specifically, he didn't do anything to help that either. He wasn't lasting very long, and I don't think with like all the like you said, the fact that you now have to have another guy as a starter to have that 6-man rotation just to accommodate Senga, with all the hassle you have to deal with, the injury risk, the longevity in games, being an issue, all that for this forkball. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
I love the ghost fork. I think it's a nasty pitch. It's one of the best pitches in the MLB when it's working, but that's when it's working or when he's throwing. If that's not happening, then Kodai Senga isn't as valuable as what you pay him for or what you adjust your entire rotation around. So I mean, I really think if you have faith in these young guys, in McLean, in Sproat, in Tong to come up, and you could still do a 6-man rotation, right? If you have all these young guys and you say, hey, Nolan McLean looks really MLB ready. Nolan McLean looks great. Worked with him in the offseason, plus the experience he had last year. That's our guy. He's not coming out of this rotation unless he's hurt. If you don't feel the same about Jonah Tong and Brandon Sproat, if those are guys that you feel should be pitching more periodically, who shouldn't be pitching as often, maybe you rotate them in and out, call them up, send them back down, this, that, whatever, or you keep them in a 6-man rotation without Kodai Senga. Nothing saying you have to have a 6-man rotation just because you have Kodai Senga. You can go and do that for other reasons, and if that's Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, David Peterson, maybe you go out and get a guy like Framber Valdez, and then you have Clay Holmes or whoever else.
Manaeus
Paul
also.
Maya.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. And I wouldn't hate that. And then that also gives you the option of maybe moving one of these guys to the pen. If that's Sean Manaea, maybe you go to Clay Holmes and you say, hey, how would you feel about being a setup man again? How would you feel about being a long reliever now that you've gotten used to pitching longer innings or longer periods of time? Like maybe you can come in and be a 3-inning reliever guy for us, and kind of move that around. Again, these are all hypotheticals. You have no idea. Maybe they go out and they go get 2 pitchers, and Brandon Sproat doesn't see the field for the first half of the season, and neither does Jonah Tong, and they go back down to develop, and then it's Nolan McLean. These 2 guys you got, Peterson, Manaea, or Holmes, Manaea, however it goes. There's a lot of options, but all of this to say this rotation should look completely different than it did at the beginning of this year. I would like to see us re-sign Griffin Canning and maybe move him to the bullpen as another guy that you could try that out with. Maybe keep him as a starter. Again, if you don't feel that you want to bring up these young guys and build a rotation around 3 rookies, I get that. That's, I have some skepticism about that. I do know a lot of Mets fans and people I know think, hey, the 3 of them should be your 1-2-3 punch. Great. I don't know how NFL ready or MLB ready rather Sproat is. He looks good. Don't know if he's ready completely to be a long-term option in the rotation. Tong I like a lot. Tong I do like a lot, but I think he still needs work. I think the only one of the 3 is McLean. Other than that, I think the spots are up in the air. And if you can get guys who with more experience, there's really no rush to get these guys up. You know what I mean? I mean, these guys, if we weren't having problems this year with the pitching, they probably wouldn't have seen the field much this year, or as much as they did at least. It really only kind of happened because we needed it to, out of pure necessity. And we didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, if you were to just sum up in a sentence or two about what you want to see and what you want to see from Stearns going into the 2026 season for the pitching staff specifically, what would that be and what would it look like?
I want to see us go out and get one more starter I don't care who that is, whether it's Framber Valdez or Dylan Cease or whoever. Um, and then I'd like to see us keep a 6-man rotation. I do want to, while talking about it, to be honest, I want us to go into the season looking to build and fill in a 6-man rotation. Whether that includes Kodai Senga, that's up to David Stearns. To be honest, I'd prefer not. I'd prefer you work out something to trade Senga. I know you. That's a bold take because of how well he performed at the beginning of this year. That is hard for me to honestly decide on.
I just don't know his trade value right now. I don't know how high it is.
That's the things. And again, these are things that I'm just kind of throwing out there in the way of it didn't work this year, and it needs to change next year. It really does. Now, maybe that's just in the offseason, Kodai Senga through training camp, through spring training, looks fantastic. And you say, there's the change. He got it back. He figured it out. But if you don't think that you're going to be able to figure out Kodai Senga, because there are points in this year where they even said, he just doesn't know what the problem is. He can't figure it out.
Mm.
It's not even an injury. It's, nothing feels bad. There's nothing wrong. He doesn't know what the issue is. He's just getting hit. He even said with his pitching coach, me and my pitching coach are working on, trying this, or we tried this, or tried that. They're literally guessing at how to fix him. So if that's the case, as a fan, I'm fed up at this point. I've gotten to the point where I can't keep waiting and waiting and waiting for Kodai Senga to fulfill what he's supposed to be and fulfill his role. Because it was nice at the beginning of the year, and when it was working great. But when it wasn't working, you saw what happened. I mean, I think if you look at the timeline, Kodai Senga, any injuries he had and his regression probably coincides pretty well with the Mets falling apart. And that was the start of the pitching falling apart. That's the core of the problem. And as much as him succeeding is good for us, there's other guys that can succeed. Kodai Senga is not the only guy that can fill in that role and succeed. To be honest, there's probably guys out there that can fill that role and succeed more consistently while avoiding injuries, while not looking at me through a television screen on a press conference saying something in Japanese, and then me looking at his interpreter, and his interpreter says, "We don't know what's wrong." And I'm like, that's not what I want to hear. Reinterpret it, retranslate it, be like, no, we'll figure it out next time. That's what I'd like to hear. Don't tell me you don't know what's happening. I don't know. It's just frustrating, and I think I'm still fresh off of, I still got a fresh wound, but my immediate reaction postseason really is not necessarily blow it up, but in terms of the pitching, completely change your perspective. I mean, knowing David Stearns, as much as I want us to go out and get somebody this offseason, I don't think he will. Knowing David Stearns, I think personally he's going to lean on the young guys. I think that's been his goal, is fill in pitching with prospects. I think he wants to get his pitchers through the system, go out, pay money for a guy like Soto, pay money for big hitters, and rely more on the farm system for hitters, or for pitchers rather. So I think it'll revolve mostly around the young guys next year. I think I would like to see maybe a Dylan Cease. I don't dislike that name. I don't want you to force anything, but if a guy like Michael King's available, fine with that. But Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga really got to win my love and admiration back, and Nolan McLean is the only pitcher in that rotation right now that I'm fully confident in.
Yeah, I think Stearns had to adjust. I think he said in his press conference that he realized that they made a mistake with not being more proactive at the deadline with getting a starting pitcher or in the offseason. And I can still, I can still understand the logic of not going out and signing a starting pitcher for a long time because they can get hurt. And if they're older, there's those years I guess tend to fall off a cliff, and maybe it's only a select few that are actually going to maintain their sort of how productive they are through the rest of their career. That being said, you still have to get an ace. You still have to get one ace at least. I get getting the depth pitchers and the depth pieces, but this staff needs an ace. Senga obviously is not going to be that ace right now, at least. He has yet to put together a full season, but minus his rookie year. We haven't seen that in the past 2 seasons. He's been banged up. Maybe a full season of that can help him, but as of right now, he is not the guy. We need a guy. And he's going to look at the market. He's going to see the best value. Him and Cohen are definitely willing to pay top dollar for the big guys, Juan Soto, but that is such a special occasion with his age, with how productive he is. That is a unique situation where he is more than willing to throw the bank at him. For pitchers, it's a little different. It's definitely a little different, and I get it. But I think just what he saw from this 1 year, and it's only 1 season, so it's tough to do both just look at 1 season and overreact, but you can't also underreact. You have to take it at full face value and see that the starting pitching was bad. Ultimately, they couldn't get out of the 4th inning. That's how bad it got. No one could get out of the 4th inning. You need a guy who can consistently, every 5th day, is going to at least give you 6. And Peterson was that guy, but he's not meant to be. He's not meant to be that guy. You need to have one at least.
And I do think that
and could be McLean. It
could be McLean eventually, but again, you don't know. So you need
get one.
Make him go get one guy.
One guy.
What's the harm in? Okay, you think McLean is gonna be your ace, right? I think McLean's gonna be the ace.
Mm-hmm.
I think McLean is the best thing I've seen on the mound in a Mets uniform since Jacob deGrom. I mean, some of the games that I've watched him pitch, mesmerizing. Last year, as great and as entertaining as the Mets were, when we were pitching, I want to see us hit. Can't wait for we're at Citi Field. Can't wait for the bottom half of the inning so I can watch us hit. I want to see the guys that are up. I'm itching for it. Yes, I'm here to watch us play some great defense, blah, blah, blah. But let's get 1, 2, 3, and then let's go. Let's go hit. Those games that McLean was on the mound when he first got up here, dude, it was every game. I'm hit. All right, if you get out, fine, whatever. McLean's on the mound. I want to watch him pitch. This kid is electric. And with the type of pitcher he has, the breaking balls and the sweeper that he has for, I think he's special enough to be that different type of a different type of pitcher that can be an ace for the Mets and you can rally around. I mean, you saw it this year with the games that he played, that these guys rallied around him and stepped up for the young guy. Is that guaranteed to happen, though? No. There's plenty of scenarios where he comes out next year and struggles. Look at Pete Alonso, his rookie year. Pete Alonso came out mashing home runs, breaks Judge's record, and then next year kind of falls off a little bit because pitchers adjusted. They learned how to adjust to Pete Alonso, and he had to readjust after that. That's going to happen with McLean. You saw it from the first Phillies game that he pitched to the second Phillies game he pitched, that the guys started to get on him more, were able to see it. They saw the sweeper low, and they started to just leave it when they saw it out of the hand. They knew it would break out of the zone. So those are things that he's going to have to, in the offseason, work with the pitching coach and with Mendoza to figure out and dial in and make his own adjustments to their adjustments. So while he's doing that and he's learning the ways of the league and he's figuring out how to readjust to how these hitters are looking at him, I think you need to bring in another guy that can almost take that pressure off of him, take that pressure off the young guys, and really be a guy that can, not only mentor, but kind of give them that level of confidence. You know what I mean? Set the tone. And worst case scenario, if you're David Stearns and you're like, well, I've already got my ace. Why am I going to go out and pay for one? Why? What's wrong with having two? You know what I mean? You go out and you get Dylan Cease, and Nolan McLean is the second coming of Jacob DeGrom. Great. Now you have the second coming of Jacob DeGrom and Dylan Cease. What's the problem? Like, if we have the money, we really do. So why not spend it on a starter? I get you spent a lot of money on Soto. I get it. Last offseason, totally give you a break. You know what I mean? Like, you just spent or committed $800 million to one guy. I get it if you didn't want to spend the money. There's no excuse this offseason. There's nothing else to spend the money on. There are no big names hitting that you're going to go out and really fight for. Unless you're going out to get a Kyle Tucker or a Cody Bellinger. And even then, that's not the big money like Soto that we're referring to. So at the end of the day, what's wrong with giving Dylan Cease some money? What's wrong with going and paying Michael King? What's wrong with paying Framber Valdez to get a guy who can solidify that rotation and take that pressure off the other guys and give McLean a chance to develop? But I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think that just sums it up. I think we did a good job, I think, summing up the season. Ultimately, we talked a lot about the pitching, but I think we had a big reason to.
That was the
That's what killed the
core
season.
season. Yeah, I
That
mean,
was
that's
the
it.
core season.
When talking about the main problems of this season, you're obviously gonna have to talk about the pitching.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. So at 2025, if you could sum it up in one word, we'll give you three because I hate one word. That's stupid. If you could do 3 words, what are 3 words to describe 2025? I'll think of mine too. I think
3 words to describe 2025.
we can do this together. The first one, I'll be positive. I'll say hopeful. I'll
So I
say
was gonna
hope.
say my first word was potential. I think there's a lot of potential in this team. My second word was going to be devastating.
Mm.
As much as I want to be on the positive side, I do have to say it was devastating. It was heartbreaking. We all have to accept it. We don't want to be pessimistic about it, but the Mets, they gave us a reason this year. They gave us a good reason. So, I can't. Dude, I can't. I'm thinking about this season so much right now.
I
Like,
know.
we bubbled up all this, and now I'm so pissed about it. But potential is there. It was devastating. Your second word.
It was gonna be disappointing. That was gonna be my second word too.
Okay.
Um,
Stays on the same train.
I think the third word is Stearns. I think that's the third word. It's what is he gonna do to change things around and maybe it's not him. Maybe it's a lot of pressure, and also briefly touch on how the Mets got rid of Hefner, Chavez, a bunch of their coaching staff. So Mendoza is coming back, and he's gonna have his a whole new staff, and he's gonna bring in his own guys. Him and Stearns are gonna bring in his own guys. They're the builders for this. But I say Stearns because for what we talked about with the starting pitching, will he address that? Will we bring in someone else? What will he do? What kind of cuts are we making? What kind of trade? Like, I think Stearns that is him is the big thing because the talent is there in the lineup. The talent is definitely there. The top 4 are there. We have youth. The pitching is a question mark, and that wasn't addressed last year. What is he going to do with the 3 new guys? And I don't know. Is he willing to shake things up a little bit more? I think that's why I say Stearns.
Yeah, I think that's a good word. I mean, I think I'll kind of go on a similar train of saying a word of something that needs to happen. I'm gonna say vibes.
That's a great.
The vibes weren't there this year.
That's which is like,
I
how do
think
you calculate vibes? But
you really can't. You
but
really
you're so
can't. There's
right.
no way to, you know,
It's a great one.
put it in any sort of data. But man, that was really the big difference this year and last year. It was the vibes. It was as a Mets fan, that game where they had the concert for Jose Iglesias' song after the game. And you see the video of the whole team. Lindor's got, some sort of cup in his hand, drinking some drink, like he's at some beach barbecue, or some family cookout or whatever. And Jose Iglesias is singing, and we just won the game, and the lights are going, and all the guys run out on the field with him, and they're all singing along. Like that moment was really for me the most representative of the whole season because that's what it was. It was just a bunch of guys who were having fun playing baseball and doing some crazy stuff and really just being like, I don't know how we're doing this sometimes, but we're doing it and we're going to keep doing it and we want to keep winning and we're a damn good baseball team. And then it got to the point where that came to an end and it was sad, but you kind of hoped that you'd build off that and carry it into the next year. And this year, even when we were good at the beginning of the year, it wasn't the same type of good. It was a lot more fundamentally just organized almost. It wasn't, I don't know.
The vibes weren't there. The vibes were off.
The vibes were
The
off.
vibes seemed off, and I hate to say that, but the vibes seemed like they were a little off. I don't know if that's because we lost Iglesias. JD Martinez wasn't there. I remember there was someone with JD Martinez talking about how, like before we got there, everyone was down in the dumps, and
Yep.
him and Iglesias really changed the tide. The veteran there was Marte, and Soto went to him a lot.
Mhm.
Lindor is a good leader, but I think maybe there was something that just wasn't connecting. I have no idea. That's only something that they can figure out. I don't know if it's a Mendoza thing. I don't know, but I think I'm definitely with you with vibes that they just seemed off. They just
Yeah.
seemed maybe a little off. I don't know. It didn't have the same 2024 feel.
No,
Maybe
to be honest,
maybe that's unfair, and maybe that's a little unfair.
yeah, to give them credit, it's really nothing will ever compare to that season. I mean that's gonna be
Maybe we
something I
can't say
remember.
that. Yeah.
No, I mean overall though, as disappointing as this season was, like we said, there's potential here and there is hope. And I know it's hard for most Mets fans to hear, but you gotta have some hope. I know it's every year we say it every year, but this is not the year to finally give up all hope.
You gotta believe.
You gotta believe. Billy said it perfect. You gotta believe. That's it. You really just gotta believe.
So I mean, I think we wrapped it up. We had a lot to talk about, but it was that type of season. This was more of a venting session, a more of a therapy session for this past year, and I'm glad we got a chance to do this, and we laid it all out there. So
We did. It's a weight off my shoulders. Thank you for that opportunity, Bill.
yeah, no, you got it, man. I appreciate your time for coming on. We'll definitely have more of these interviews and these more ball talk sessions coming up in the future. We'll see what happens with the Mets. We'll stay updated with that, and we'll hope again for next year. But
Sounds good.
until then, you just gotta believe, and hopefully these Mets can pull through. So we'll see. Ryan, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, that's today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Please, if you made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, dislike, do whatever you got to do. Just, I would love your feedback. Show some support. I really do appreciate everything, no matter what it is. I love it all. So thank you so much again. Be sure to check out the other podcast episodes, the most recent EFL recap, the video with Zach and I doing an intro for one of our high school football games. Check it all out. It's on the YouTube, and the podcast episodes are also on Spotify. So thank you so much once again for supporting. I'll be pumping out more stuff. So thank you all so much, and I'll talk to you all later.
I got the joy down in my heart, down in my heart, down in my. I got the J.